So one thing that was very shameful in my childhood, very embarrassing, that I didn't like to talk about, that only a handful of my friends ever knew about, was that I was held back in second grade. And I'm telling you this in part because I am now telling fewer people than I've probably told ever, but also because it was the best thing that ever happened in my educational career. As a kid, I was a tremendous runt. I mean, I was small. Even after I was held back, I was still at the front of my class as the littlest kid. And you can say, well, yeah, but your mom was, 5 foot. Right. But my dad was 6 foot. No, this comes down to diet and nutrition, and we were friggin' malnourished. So much for eating vegetables, Mom. That wasn't the problem. We needed some goddamn protein and calcium, and anyway, that's not important. So here's the advantage that I got by being held back. Well, first of all, the school I was in was closed for a reconsolidation, so when I went to the new school, only about half the kids knew that I'd been held back. That's not great, and I still had another 5 years to go before I would break out of that mold. But really, kids are dumb and their memories fade quickly, and within a year or two, nobody even remembered. But mostly, it was because from that day forward, I was more mature and more prepared. It doesn't matter that the year I was held back, coincidentally, was the same year that my parents got divorced and my sisters went through some abuse and all kinds of terrible things happened in the family. That's secondary. No, I was more mature, I was more prepared. And then at the end of 6th grade, when I went on to 7th grade, instead of being a neopubescent 7th grader, I fully hit puberty in the summer before 7th grade. I became alpha, and it was awesome. In 6th grade, I was the biggest nerd ever, but in 7th grade, I was something very different. My hair finally trained, my body finally filled out a bit, I got a fashion sense that was my own and not just hand-me-downs and crap my mom made. No, what happened was, I was no longer the biggest nerd in the school. I was now the king of the nerds. And I mean that seriously. I was a nerd in 6th grade, and not in the modern sense where that's a good thing, not in the post-tech boom era where nerd means rich. No, I was a nerd in the 80s sense. And in 7th grade, I became the king of the nerds, which means even though the popular kids didn't love me, half the school did. And because you change schools and everything remixes along boundary lines again, I had, once again, half of the students didn't know who I was, didn't care. And because I was held back in elementary school, a lot of my teachers branded me as a dummy head. And so, even with the same effort and the same work and the same labor towards my studies, from 6th grade I went to bad marks, to 7th grade I went to honor study. Ugh. And the teachers were no better. In elementary school, because I'd been held back, I was kind of labeled as the dummy head by the teachers. But when I went to the new school, middle school, the teachers didn't know that. So the same schoolwork I was doing, the same studying I was doing, the same papers I was writing, all of a sudden, I was on the honor roll. As I got out of middle school and into high school, things got even better. I was driving before any of my classmates. I got to let my creativity blossom before the competition. You don't understand how big that is to me. I was writing plays in 9th grade. If I'd been in 10th grade, the previous year, I couldn't have done it. It would have changed the entire trajectory of my life. And frankly, things were just plain easier. So frankly, honestly, one of the best things to ever happen to me was being held back a grade. And my kids are a little behind, the middle two. When we moved from Highline School District to Auburn School District, I desperately begged them to hold them back a year. I pled my case. They looked at the kids, everything and whatever, and they said, you know what? Unfortunately, that's just not something we do anymore. No, nowadays, apparently, regardless of capacity, kids are just pushed through on a freight train to graduation, which is, I don't know. I just wish my kids had the same advantage I did.